why don't we get going? We're not gonna run around the room, everybody knows everybody, correct?
No, not quite. Let's have the audience.
Okay. Andrew, do you mind?
Andy McLean, I'm from Dover.
I'm Bill Antone, the superintendent.
Tom Oakley from Dover.
Say again?
Tom Oakley from Dover.
Can you spell that, please?
Oakley.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Common spelling.
I'm Christine Cruz from Dover,
C-R-U-Z, right?
K-U-R-U-C-Z.
There you go, I'm not even close. I butchered that.
Okay, you gotta spell that again.
K-U-R-U-C-Z.
Okay, you are.
U-C-Z.
Oh, okay. I left out the you last time.
She was gonna comment about that at the next meeting. So,
Christine with a K?
C-H.
Thank you.
so everybody should have a copy of the River Valley Unified School District Annual Meeting, which will be Tuesday, February 13th, 2018, 7 p.m. at the Dover Town Hall in the Dover Common. We're asking the legal voters of the River Valley Unified School District, which we'll call the district from now on. Hello. We got some paperwork up here for you. And if you can just state your name for the record keeper.
Dale Sherman.
Thank you. So, which comprising the voters of the towns of Dover and Wardsboro are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Dover Town Hall in Dover, Vermont, to conduct the following business. So I guess we should add a V to that. Article 1, to elect a moderator to serve for the fiscal year July 1, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. Our current moderator is Dr. Backus from Wardsboro, and Dr. Backus says he'll be there on February 13th to run the meeting, and he would be, we had mentioned that we were going to do the meetings the second Tuesday of February, so he has agreed to be moderator again if the voters so wish to elect him, and they'll be elected from the floor. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Article 2, to elect a clerk to serve from July 1, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. Andy McLean, the Dover Town Clerk, was elected to be the River Valley Unified School District Clerk. Andy's agreed to do it for one more year. It's going to be a little bit of a issue with some voting because our first budget, which we'll discuss later, has to be voted on by ballot. But he has agreed to do it if we also approve Article B. So we will be electing from the floor, and if we don't approve Article B, the first order of business for our clerk will be to resign. We'll have to find another one. Any questions on that? We did check with the Wardsboro Town Clerk, and she has no interest. We wanted to make sure that we were trying to be fair with all these positions. 3A, and then, I'm sorry, 2B is to set a stipend of $2,000 for the clerk's position for FY 2019. And that has to do with when we vote on the budget next year, not this year. The votes have to be commingled, so you can't tell which vote.
Which town the person's
right.
voting from.
If you look at like the Leland and Gray and the Brattleboro Union District votes, a lot of times you'll see they list by town how many yeas and how many nays. And the one thing that's in our articles of agreement, at least for the first year, is that the votes are commingled, so you're not sure who. You don't know where the votes came from. And it just creates a little bit of an issue because you do vote on town meeting day where there's other votes for the district clerk to also be responsible for. So we felt that the $2,000 stipend was very fair. And then we'll work on having a better system, hopefully, to present to the voters next year when we meet in Wardsboro that will make it a lot easier on the clerk. And then also he has to get I guess you got to get the two bags together and dump them together and shake them up and then.
Not necessarily.
But you got it pretty figured.
Yeah, it's a big process.
You want any other comments or?
Not if anybody has any questions. I could talk about it all night, but we don't want to do that.
Everybody good? You're gonna have to yell in the back because I can't quite see you. 3A, to elect the WCSU treasurer, serve from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. When we wrote these articles, that was gonna be the recommendation we were gonna make, and we're gonna ask that you vote not to elect the WCSU treasurer, because after some consideration and some forms that we have to fill out as school boards every year, the superintendent, the WCSU treasurer, felt it was not in the best interest to have it be the same people. So, oh, Carrie, you did come. So we are gonna recommend that Marco Tellini, who is currently the treasurer, also be the treasurer. And what that will involve is he will have to go to central office twice a month and sign checks. And so Marco has agreed to do it. And in Wardsboro, again, the clerk and the treasurer are the same person, and she doesn't want either spots. So, any questions? And that'll be from the floor, so somebody will have to nominate him from the floor. Yes?
So Richie, right off the bat, one of us should probably just move to amend the motion to elect a treasurer to serve instead of,
Right.
right?
And I was gonna try to talk to Dr. Backus before this meeting, just to see how he wanted to handle that.
Cool, great, thanks.
Like, we call them friendly emotions from the floor, they'll be suggested.
Excellent.
And then Article B is to set a stipend of $500 for the treasurer position if it's not the WCSU treasurer for FY 2019. And we're also gonna ask for a friendly amendment to that. With having to make 2 trips to Townsend a month, we were gonna ask that the treasurer get $600 for the first year, because there won't be a lot of checks to sign, and also mileage for his trip from Dover to central office. And we'll ask again for, an amendment to the motion. And we thought that was fair. Marco thought that was very fair, especially for the first year, because there won't be, there's not a lot of checks. There's really, probably, there may even be a lot of times when he doesn't have to go over, there may be no checks to write.
But there will be a lot of preparation because we'll be changing different accounting systems, and we want to make sure that your treasurer is well aware of the whole process so that there's that check and balance.
Thank you. Anybody else? We're not gonna make it to lunchtime, guys, if you don't ask some questions. To vote compensation for the school directors at $1,000 for FY 2019. This was the worst written agenda I've ever done. It's $1,000 per school director, it's not $1,000 altogether. And it should have been maybe a little bit more specific, but, Wardsboro currently gets,
$200.
and Dover gets $2,000, so we kind of figured that was a good middle ground. Any questions on that? Now remember, last year Randy Turk tried to get $100,000 for each board member, so, for the select board, so, since the school was first, I brought it up at town meeting, but nobody seemed to jump at it. Tom, I wish you were there for me, buddy. Article 5, to set the date of the annual meeting is the second Tuesday in February, odd years in Wardsboro, and even years in Dover at the town halls in the respective towns. Pretty straightforward. Any questions on that? We're trying to switch back and forth so all the towns get a chance. And the only reason Wardsboro got the odd was because we had our organizational meeting in Wardsboro, because the governor was going to Wardsboro to talk to people and see people, and they did a really nice presentation at the Wardsboro Town Hall. And then Article 6 is to transact any other business thought proper to include the following. So we put down as a board, we put down 5 or 6 or 7 articles, or 7 things we want to discuss. There's no binding action on these, and it's not any money items. But the first one was to review the board of directors meeting locations and dates. Review board director meeting location and date. So what we've set up so far, and we'll have to reorganize after this meeting, No, we don't have to reorganize because we're not having any newly elected people, right?
Nobody changes.
Nope.
Yeah. So we've been doing the first Mondays in Wardsboro at 7 o'clock and the third Mondays in Dover at 7 o'clock. And then Dover School Board meets before the first one, and you guys don't
They meet
meet.
on Tuesday.
Yeah, so we were in Dover, we were trying to kill two birds with one stone. And it also worked good for the superintendent, excuse me, for his schedule. Any thoughts on that? Any yays, nays? Review the work done by the board of directors to this date. So what have we done to this date? We prepared a poorly written agenda. We've had a lot of conversation with Andy that we'll discuss in a little bit. We are working on setting up a new school district. We are hoping to get more public involvement. We've hired the guy behind the camera to videotape us every meeting. We have hired a lady named Anita Raphael to do some publicity for us, try to get what we're doing out there, and we're hoping to get a lot of people involved. And they're really exciting meetings. These two people, Tom and Kristen, have been to a couple of the meetings. They have a lot of fun there. Tom, you haven't gone to Wardsboro for a meeting yet, have you?
I haven't, I'm gonna have to do that.
Yep, next week.
Okay.
You came to one or two Wardsboro meetings, haven't you? We meet in the library in Wardsboro too, good time. I can't think of anything else.
What's that? We get policies.
Yo,
Tons of policies.
yeah, we got the mission statement actually done kind of before we were formed. We've got a lot of the boilerplate policies done. We've left a couple of the a little bit more difficult and involved policies to after we start working on forming. We've had several meetings where we are starting to work on our vision so that we can direct our superintendent on what he's gonna do over the summer for us. And part of that kind of falls into the calendar, the work calendar of the board, which we handed out. It's that 2-page handout. And that's the next thing we were gonna talk about. So this is kind of a roadmap, and what we did, and this actually took a couple meetings, was to just go through and come up with kind of what we're gonna do for work. So a lot of the stuff December through January has been done. December through question mark is contract negotiations. We've done our part, we're waiting to hear back. January through March, we're working on the vision statement. We started that 2 meetings ago in Wardsboro. Spent quite a bit of time on it. Last meeting, as Tom can attest to. We're gonna try to get 5 guiding principles and can get community engagement. Carrie's working on a questionnaire that we hope that we can pass out during our school district meeting, as well as the town school district meetings and the town meetings. And then March through May, I mean, it's all there, you can read it. If anybody has any questions, you want to take a couple minutes and read it? Anybody have any comments? And we're hoping that we have a much better turnout and that we actually get some discussion so we can use that. And we're hoping our superintendent's going to be there, so he will be able to hear from that too. And I know he reviews the videos after meetings to see kind of what everybody's thinking, so that he'll be using that as he also considers the recommendations he's going to be making to us as a board. Everybody good? Everybody good? I know we've seen that before, or some people have seen it before, so move on. Election of directors representing Wardsboro. So one of the things is, Wardsboro has always elected school board directors and their officials in town from the floor, where Dover votes by Australian ballot. Because we don't have any at-large, and because they're not commingled votes for school board directors, Andy did a lot of research and found out that if Wardsboro wants to, and if it's important to them, that they can go back to electing, at town meeting day, electing a school director. So Andy, do you want to take a few minutes and go over your chart?
Sure. Woodsboro is used to electing their board members from the floor.
What's on TV?
Jeez. Woodsboro is used to electing their board members from the floor. So they have the opportunity to continue doing that or not. And maybe the guys from Woodsboro have a little more insight on whether they would want to continue or not. But for the folks from Wardsboro, it's something you're going to want to think about, whether you want to elect from the floor or have a ballot vote, an Australian ballot. Currently, it's set up for Australian ballot, the way the Articles of Agreement are written. And Richie, did you want me to go over the budget vote?
Yeah, because that's the next item.
Anybody want a flow chart to look at?
Hey, could I ask a question?
You can.
What would be necessary so that Wardsboro could allow a floor vote? What has to happen for that to be allowed?
Well, if I remember correctly, and I can go back, we got an opinion on this from an attorney. But if I remember correctly, it's within the Articles of Agreement. It's not a part of statute, and the Articles of Agreement are able to be changed by this board, by a vote of this board. It doesn't necessarily have to go to a vote of the voting public.
So there would just need to be a vote of the board to allow for Wardsboro in the it would be in 2019, to elect their representatives to the River Valley Education District.
The attorney said that yes, this board could vote before 2019, so that when Wardsboro votes in 2019, they could do it from the floor. He said that would be acceptable.
Perfect.
And I'm going by memory. I'm going to make a note to make sure of that.
I remembered that exact thing.
Okay.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
get it out there.
Ask the
Just
question,
have it
get on
here,
TV.
Just so that we can, so that we can get discussion on it,
Exactly.
because we didn't want to make a decision.
Right, I just, because it's gotta be done a year in advance,
Yes.
so that everybody understands
Well, we
why
can
you're doing
actually-
it.
We can make that decision. I don't think it has to be a year in advance.
No, I'm just saying, you're talking about.
Right, because we
Right,
want to get
yes.
input, because Wardsboro, it basically affects Wardsboro.
Yeah.
And if the Wardsboro voters all say, oh no, we're gonna enjoy voting by Australian ballot, then we'll leave it alone. But if they say no, we'd really like to go back to the floor vote, then over the summer, we can address that issue when you're doing your work and we have a little bit less. And then that was our thought, is then get that taken care of beforehand, so that if they would start electing from the floor, if that's what, the voters tell us they want. I was trying to find that paper for you.
Yeah. So the other voting issue regards the budget, and that's where your flow chart comes in. And I couldn't get this to print in color, but it is in color on my computer, and it's prettier. But this will have to do. So basically, the way the Articles of Agreement are set up, we vote budgets by Australian ballot on town meeting day, and the ballots are commingled, which is a very difficult way to vote on a budget. And there's other options. The same attorney who advised us on voting for Wardsboro's directors also advised us on our options concerning this vote. And this vote, he advised us, would have to take place as it's written in the articles the first time in 2019. That's the first box on the left. That's how we're set up to do things currently. What that means is the budget for this unified school district would be voted on at Dover and Wardsboro's town meetings by Australian ballot. The ballots would then travel to a central location and be commingled or counted in such a way that there was no vote count for Dover and a vote count for Wardsboro separate. It would be one vote count so that you wouldn't know Dover voted for the budget, Wardsboro voted against the budget. It would be one vote total for the unified school district. Either the school district voted in favor or the school district voted against. So the other options that are in front of us would be to vote by Australian ballot at Dover and Wardsboro's town meetings, same as the first way, but not commingling the ballots, so that the ballots could be counted as part of normal town meeting procedure. Much less of a process there, a lot easier to accomplish. But what you lose is you lose that anonymity of not knowing how each town voted. The idea, I believe, behind commingling the ballots is that if there is a controversial issue that might split the towns, there would be no way to know if, Wardsboro voted against, banning the latest textbook and Dover voted for, adopting that particular text. There'd be no, it wouldn't pit the towns against each other, I believe is the idea behind commingling. But most unified school districts do not commingle their votes because it's just such a pain in the neck to accomplish that. It requires a lot. And I might add, in my opinion, in thinking about this, I'm not sure that the goal of commingling is really necessarily going to be accomplished by commingling. And what I mean is that if there's an issue which would, in the minds of the voters, split along town lines, it's easy to second guess after the vote and say, Dover voted yes on that one, I know it, and Wardsboro voted no. And there would be no verification if that was actually the case. Whereas if you actually have the vote numbers, the voters will often surprise you. And in Dover, I might say, Dover voted for that. Well, the actual numbers come out and, well, a lot of voters in Dover voted against it. They surprised me. And knowing the numbers might, in fact, help folks to not be divided. Instead of the anonymity of a commingled vote. All right, so that's the second option that you have. The third option would be to vote your budget at the annual school district meeting from the floor. So in other words, that's how Dover and Wardsboro currently vote their budgets. At town meeting, we're all in the room. The budget number comes up in an article. It's moved and seconded. We all discuss it. The school board explains it. We have the opportunity to amend it. And then there is a voice vote from the floor. You can ask for a paper ballot if anonymity is important, but generally it's a voice vote. And the advantage of that is that you have the opportunity to amend it. It's much less likely that you'll have a budget voted down. Every year, if you listen to the news, you hear about school budgets being voted down in this town or that town or the other town. And a lot of that has to do, in my opinion, with an Australian ballot vote for the budget, and folks feeling frustrated, and the only way they can express that frustration is through voting no. Whereas if you have a problem with a particular program, spending way too much on buses, well, you can make an amendment to the budget and still come to a yes vote, and avoid the long, difficult process of this board going back, rewriting the budget, guessing what the voters will vote yes for this time, rewarning a meeting, voting again, maybe voting up, maybe voting down. But I love the idea of the voice vote. Of course, the turnout you're going to get at this annual meeting compared to town meeting, you're just not going to get the turnout. That's a downside. That's a downside. It's a very difficult question. This little flow chart I printed up to help you think about it. You're going to want to make a decision over the next year or two and how you want to proceed. It's not going to be an easy decision. Honestly, I go back and forth. In my own mind as to what would be best for you to do, but you need to think about it and make a decision eventually.
With all those options, just clarifying though that the first vote is the commingled.
Has to be.
Has to be. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
and then we
required.
can decide how to move forward after that.
That's
That's why
right.
we wanna have
Yep.
this, we wanna start discussing it now, even though it doesn't happen next year. At
Sure.
least that way we can get as much input as we can. And I will, Andy, that's a great presentation. Just one comment. It's gonna be really interesting to see how we get, because you guys actually have your meetings the Monday night
The night
before.
town meeting, yes.
And how, you get pretty decent turnout, don't you?
I think we've gotten better turnout since we did it at night than we used to.
Yeah, and we've had that discussion at town meeting, like how do we get more people? And would we have better turnout if it was at night versus during the day? So I think it'd be kind of interesting just to see what we do get for a turnout. And I think some of that will help guide us in a decision too, because if we have this first meeting and we have 200 people show up, maybe we say, yeah, maybe that it is a good idea to
Right.
try it. If we have the same 4 or 5 people show up, then we might say, yeah, this maybe isn't a good thing.
Right. Sir?
So the West River Board will be deciding at the 2019 annual meeting of their date for the 2020 annual meeting, correct?
They'll be deciding,
So right
Okay.
now, they're going to have an annual meeting in 2018,
yeah,
at which time they have warned the date of the annual meeting for 2019. And in 2019, they have to commingle the ballot.
in 2019, they have to commingle the ballot.
And also in 2019, they will get an opportunity to choose when the Union School District meeting would be in 2020.
Actually, so this decision as well is changing the Articles of Agreement, not state law.
Okay.
This board can do it.
Right.
However, the attorney's opinion was that, that the election of officers and the voting of the budget were very different things. If you, and that the voting of the budget for a variety of reasons needed to take place the way it was written in the Articles of Agreement for 2019. But the town or the school district, the voters of the school district won't need to vote to change this.
Correct.
They'll need to instruct these folks to vote to change it, if they want to change it.
Sure.
And then these folks can get that done.
But I'm just looking for the date in 2020. They'll just warn it, just like they're warning it now, a year in advance.
Warn what?
The date of the annual meeting. So right on the warning that Rich just shared with us, they have the date of the second Tuesday
Okay,
of 2019 for the annual meeting.
okay.
So here's what I'm posturing.
Yeah.
Is that in 2020, neither Wardsboro School District or Dover School District will be having a school district meeting. But we have half of the population that is already used to a nighttime meeting for exactly what you expressed at the Union School District meeting by floor vote.
Yep,
I just want to make sure I'm understanding that. Am I understanding it correctly, that currently Wardsboro has a nighttime meeting where they have a floor vote for their school district
yes,
budget?
yes,
Right?
they do.
And so, under these scenarios, in 2020, that could be replicated, and it could
Yes.
occur on the exact same
Yes.
day that Wardsboro is currently doing.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
that's all I wanted,
yes,
if that was possible.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Not, but
What I'm suggesting is
Yeah.
that you might have a population of people that are already used to an evening meeting the night before town meeting, and because Dover would not be having a school district meeting on that town meeting in 2020, there would only be a town meeting. It might be something to consider if option 3 is something you want to do. It seems you already have half of your population that is used to option 3
Right, yes,
on that day.
excellent point.
So it's just something to, I just want to make sure they have enough time to consider that.
Yep, right.
cool. Any questions for Andy?
Is this strictly the article that would be for the budget? Or is it all articles are done by Australian ballot?
No, just, well, there's some other articles that would have, are required to be done by ballot. So if we were gonna try to, if we wanted to close Dover School, that, I think we said that had to be by ballot in the articles.
Yes, because it was in the warning.
Right, we wanted to make sure that was taken care of, and the budget. And we, in the articles, we set up to vote for the board members, but other than that, usually, so any money article would have to be voted on by ballot the first year. Any expenditures. Or, I'm sorry, no, just the budget. Because we can vote to expend, no, we can set stipends from the floor, but we can't, then we have to put them in the budget. Yeah, no, I think it's just the budget. And I would believe the budget, any major budgetary expenditure, that would be kind of part of the budget. So, like in Dover, we vote separate articles.
Right.
If we were to vote by ballot on the budget, then those articles will all be separate articles on the ballot. Or we could
Yeah,
make
that's
them
what
separate.
I'm asking. So
Yes.
like when Andy was talking about separate issues and how people voted in different towns, you're talking about not the specific budget article, but you're talking about all the articles that are warranted for the meeting.
No, because we'll still have an open floor meeting where we'll elect the moderator and we'll elect the treasurer and the clerk, and we'll transact some business, but the expenditure items are the ones that the voters approve. And those have to be approved by Australian ballot the first year. And I think Andy's just gonna confirm that for our next meeting.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Dale.
I have another question, sorry.
Hopefully you got a bunch of them.
Okay, good. Well, and at the Union School District meeting on the flow chart right here.
Yes.
By floor vote,
Mm-hmm.
how far in advance would we be able to get that budget?
We have to post it 30 days in
30 days
advance.
in advance?
A minimum of 30 to 60, what is the,
Well, your warning is, earliest you can warn is 40 days before the meeting, latest is 30 days, I'm pretty darn sure. Yeah, so at least a month, Dale, you would have for that budget number.
Okay.
but I'm sure the budget will be done the same way they are done by the schools now. They're just not gonna say everything is gonna be like, oh, we're gonna send you out the budget, vote on it next week. You know, the board will have to meet to discuss what numbers they wanna put to the budget. And then there'll be a vote by the board that this is the budget we wanna present to the voters. And then that budget would get warned. And we are required by our articles to have pre-meetings in both towns. So that's why we're having 4 meetings to discuss this before we actually go to vote on these articles. We're doing 2 in Wardsboro and 2 in Dover. And we did 1 on a Tuesday night and 1 on a Monday night in each town, 1 combined with this regular school board meeting, so that we can get this out to people as early as we can. Plus, one of the things in our articles is that we need to let people know about it. That's why we have the guy videotaping us back there who doesn't talk, but every now and then he'll wave to you. And there's also minutes that are posted on websites, both at Wyndham Central, and there's a blog site. So we try to keep people informed the best we can.
Is this one the Union School District meeting, the second week in February? Is that the one you're talking about? So 30 to 40 days prior to that is before the beginning of the actual 2020 year.
Well, we always vote
Right.
budget before
Well,
the
yeah.
actual fiscal year.
Well, no, what I'm trying to say is the budget has to be then done before some of the numbers always come down from the state.
Yeah, we've been doing that for 25 years I've been on the board.
It just might be more difficult.
Well,
But no.
you're never gonna know the numbers until May or April, when the legislature adjourns and the governor signs, and you're required to submit the stuff to the state by the end of May 31st, May 30th. I always forget how many days are in every month. So, I mean, we're always making budgets on assumptions.
But those state numbers more affect the tax rate than the budget,
Correct.
right? So the budget, Dale, we wouldn't be able to know as much about the tax rate, but the budget numbers, we could have a pretty good idea of.
Just so, since we've been dealing with Act 60 and Act 68, we've been able to tell the voters at town meeting around what we think the tax rate's gonna be, and there's not been many years we haven't hit it, so.
Can I ask another question? So then this would be if you guys decide to amend the articles to then do an Australian ballot, the floor vote in February for the district, the River Valley's district, for their school budget would take place before the town budget in the regular March meeting.
Correct.
And the March meeting is when we usually know our numbers by, was what you just said.
No, we don't.
What did you just say then? Usually, you said usually know at
I
town
said
meeting.
usually the number we present to the voters at town meeting, we're able to hit. If we tell you we think this is gonna be our tax rate, we have in the 25 years, we've been able to hit that number. That's what we've come out with at the end of the year. The legislature does not vote their final budget until sometime in April. Sometimes even we've gone as late as May. So that's when we determine, and as Andy says, the budget's the budget, so we can't tell, we vote on a budget. I mean, I don't know, my big joke at town meeting every year has been, if I could predict the price of a gallon of oil, so we sit here in January and December, and we're trying to predict the price of oil a year and a half out. And if I could nail that number, you don't think I'd be here, I'd be playing the futures market, and I'd be pretty wealthy somewhere. So a lot of it is all based on assumptions. We're always presenting budgets that we say we think this is what the tax rate's gonna be, but there's no guarantee to that. However, because especially in Dover, but Wardsboro's got the same item, you don't vote income, you only vote expenditures. And that's why we always have the article in there that allows us to take money from the reserve fund to shoot for a certain tax rate, and we have been able to do that. So yes, we have. So moving it up a month is not gonna affect it any more than we've been doing by voting it in March.
There's also a common level of appraisal that comes out later too, which I think
No, that's
tax
out
rate
right
too.
now.
It's out already.
That comes out in December, doesn't it usually?
Yeah, but the grand list won't come out until April.
The grand list doesn't
Don't get that
affect
till
us,
April.
because they're always using the previous year's grand list. The CLA is fixed. By the time we put our stuff together, the CLA will be
Not
fixed.
Until later,
No.
until April.
No, we get that.
Yeah, we have that.
We have the CLA, we have the weighted average daily membership. What we don't have is, we don't know what the yield is gonna be, we don't know what the tax rate
The
is
rate
gonna
itself
be,
is
and we don't know what some of the funds are gonna be, like the special ed reimbursement, which more affects central office now. We don't know what the small school grant's gonna be, transportation grant, we don't know what some of those categorical grants are. But all the other numbers are pretty fixed. We don't know when we put together the budget, we usually don't have insurance, we usually adjust for insurance. And we also wind up adjusting some of our numbers if we want to. We can adjust the tuition. Sometimes we don't always have tuition numbers when we put together a budget. So we have assumptions. Yes.
Just to give context to Dale's question, we do this every year for Leland and Gray, and we do it a week prior to this projected date. So it's the first week of February. And as Rich says, you do have almost all the really high factor elements to the budget, but you cannot finalize the specificity until the legislature leaves in May. But just last year, going through the process and presenting a budget and a tax rate for 5 different towns that all feed into Leland and Gray, and doing that the first week of February, it was extremely close to what was presented to the voters in February and what actually played out in May. But there is some give between that. But I can tell you that our office, and in particular our chief financial officer, has great experience with those tight timelines. So I do feel confident in looking at this runway that River Valley is considering.
Keep going.
I don't have another one yet.
But the budget questions have always been, what constitutes a budget? You guys got nothing?
Now, this is really helpful.
Cool.
So is there anything that anybody thinks we ought to do different at our meeting? Is there any information we didn't have today that would be helpful for you all to make decisions? Or do you think you all can make some pretty good decisions based on what we had? Remembering that we're not asking for a decision to be made on the voting or the ballot, we're just looking for input. Was there anything that you guys think that would help you guys better decide something that we discussed? If you think of something and you can't make the next couple meetings, you can always drop me an email, drop me a note, send a letter up to the school or something, or a note to the school. But definitely let us know if there's something you can think of that would, if when you get home and the light goes on, you say, God, I wish I'd asked this. My email's always available, or you can call me on my cell phone. I'll give you that if you need it. But definitely, reach out to us, because we definitely want to be informed. And Tom and I had a long conversation the other day. Let people know too about what's going on. So if they have any questions, and I'm sure with Wardsboro parents, when we get there, if Wardsboro parents want to get together and talk about some stuff, I'm sure they can do that. When we're not meeting in a ward meeting, we can't act as on behalf of the school, but we can listen and take notes and bring it back to the group. So we're really trying to get the word out and try to get a lot of input from you folks, so that we can make better decisions to offer a educationally sound, taxpayer friendly budget that we can all agree with.
Question for the board. Once we get further along in the process, and you guys get further along in the process, and you start really getting to kind of like the meat and potatoes of the district, making decisions on transportation, special programs like IB, for instance. I understand Wardsboro has a kind of a special teacher accreditation program or training program that's,
They're doing a national action research study on high-quality instructional practices.
just special, something you guys had going on that, you know, maybe Dover would be interested in? In other words, like, how does that work? Is that, are the 6 of you going to be voting on all those issues
So-
for the budget?
So what will happen if you look at our timeline? We're gonna listen to everybody, we're gonna put together our vision, which you know how hard that was last time.
Very difficult.
But we're gonna hopefully get a good vision, and we're gonna give those guardrails, the things that are have to be done or can't be done. And then we're gonna turn that over to our administrator, Mr. Antone, and then he's gonna work with his staff, both building administrators throughout the SU, people throughout the state, and he's gonna meet with us over the summer and tell us in open meetings like this and say, okay, here's what I'm thinking, and he's gonna lay out what it's gonna look like. You know, he has to be more specific. He has to say, this is what I foresee for staff, this is what I foresee for programming, make recommendations on how we're gonna move people around. And then we're gonna take that information along with input that we then get from you folks as you listen to him report to us. And then we will have to come up with a plan. We're not the educational experts, so we're not gonna say that we need 6 teachers in this building and 2 in that building, and we need a blue school bus that runs this way, so people, you know, the specifics are up to him. We give vision, and we give some guardrails, some guidelines.
And I guess piggybacking off that, this might be for Bill as well. You know, do we feel now with Act 46 that we've taken the step that we kind of have the state off our back? So in other words, if we have the money to do everything, because I think we have pretty good resources, the 2 towns, are we going to be allowed to do that? Or do we feel, you know, from the information you guys are getting from Montpelier and from any consultants, attorneys that you have working, that they're going to really be looking to say, okay, so you guys took the step, but what else have you done? How have you tightened the rope and how have you tightened the budget? You know, like, if we have the money, can we spend it? Is that?
I think we're gonna be okay. So the governor sent out a letter saying that he's got some new guidelines he'd like to see us get to a certain level of ratio for pupil and staff, which really isn't as high as you might think.
Sure.
What was it, Bill, 4 point?
It's at 4.25, and then we'll raise it to 5.
Pupils per student?
Staff.
Staff to
Staff,
pupil.
a ratio. And he's, you know, so there are a lot of pressures every year on the state to save money. So, because, you know, when people get their tax bills, they get really ugly.
Sure.
So, I think Act 46 was the first step in more and more consolidation. I think for right now, we are okay because there's really nobody similar to us, very close to us. That's just my opinion. The state and the legislatures can do whatever they want. When Act 46 first came out, they were saying, you know, well, you could be with this school. And I mean, they were showing us visions of schools spread out, you know, 100 miles apart. I don't think a lot of that's going to work, but you don't ever know what they're going to do. I think as long as we keep presenting a educationally sound, taxpayer-friendly budget, that we're going to be okay. If we were to go in and double or triple our budget, I think the state's going to look at us and say, what are you doing and how can we maybe change some things? I think if our test scores become down not our test scores, our performance comes down in the dumps, and they may look at us and say, why are you doing that? What are we going to do to make that better? But I have no doubt that this group here and you guys there and that gentleman there are going to be able to, for the foreseeable future, still present a high-quality education to our students that we can afford. And I don't think you're going to see, at least at this level, a lot of changes. You may see some changes at the SU level. You may see some bigger changes, you know, at the state level. But I think for right now, we're going to be okay for a few years. Again, if I had a crystal ball and could predict for any certainty, I wouldn't be here.
Bill, that number that the state, the governor was talking about, the 1,
4.25 to 1?
yeah,
Yes.
the 1.
The 1, yes.
Who does that include? Does that include people at the Agency of Education or yourself, or is that just teachers in the classroom?
It's percentages of human people over 18 that are employed by an individual school district. So if you have a music teacher who is here 1 day a week, that is worth 0.2 or 1/5 of a person. If you have a superintendent that is responsible for 1,000 students, that's worth 0.001. It's all, whatever the budget of Wardsboro pays into for a human being that is servicing the school district, then they are calculated into that comparison.
So the people in Montpelier, the Agency of Education?
They are not, no.
Oh, they're not?
No. It goes as high as the superintendent.
Okay.
And
Thank
then, just to follow up on both of you, I would tell you, Tom, under state law, under current Act 46 law, Wardsboro and Dover have merged under the law, and so therefore they are not vulnerable to subsequent action under the statewide plan, which is going to be given in draft form on June 1st and adopted by the State Board of Education on November 30th. As Rich said, that does not preclude any new law happening or anything else happening, but as far as Act 46, Dover and Wardsboro have taken the legal step to vote to merge and therefore are not under any conditions under anything else under Act 46.
Act 46, understood.
You know, one thing we were talking earlier, you know, Brattleboro, Wyndham Southeast has pretty much operated as a supervisory district for ever since I can remember. With the exception of Vernon, they're all K-8 schools. They all feed into, they all feed into the high school. They were like the poster child for the accelerated, if you could form a supervisory district in this first year that the law came out, you got a 10-cent tax break in your first year. And I always thought that was going to be a no-brainer. And that there's not a town that voted for it. Everybody voted against, every town voted against it. And they've always worked together anyways, you know. It was just kind of interesting how that worked. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because I was saying that you've got a law that basically says you should be a supervisory district, and you have a Secretary of Education who's supposed to present a plan to the state board to enact that almost says that should be supervisory, but you have a whole bunch of voters that said and I mean a high percentage. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that all plays out and how that's going to make the legislators think about the law or maybe change something in the law. So, you know, that it's going to be more interesting. That's why I said at the supervisory union level, it could be very interesting what happens. I'm trying to see, do you remember, Bill, what his thought was if we cut that per pupil? It was going to save how many millions of dollars?
I think it was 100 million. If it went from 4.25 to 5.1.
Oh, 30 million. Achieve a student to staff ratio of 1 to 4.45 through attrition.
Right.
In FY19.
That's just 0.2.
Yeah.
That's going from 4.25 to 4.45.
Any idea how that affects us today?
Well, so I mean, the verbiage
numbers?
in the menu is that it would be done, as Christine says, through attrition. So you can imagine when you have a very small pool of what River Valley's employs, and you have 3 teachers that retire, well, that's attrition. But what's the mechanism? Does that mean that you can only hire back a 2.8 worth of teachers? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
without understanding what the mechanism is, I don't know how it would affect our new district. But I think the point is they're trying to illuminate the reduction from 100,000 students to 77,000 students, and how that impacts the student-to-teacher ratio, or, sorry, the staff to student ratio.
So just to your other question, so this came out January 18th, and it was from Secretary Suzanne Young. And 5-year initiatives for the Agency of Education. One of the initiatives the governor's group is recommending is create a school consolidation commission. Create a commission to consider whether all schools with extremely low student population and student-to-teacher ratios remain viable. If deemed non-viable, the commission will consider the most cost-effective way to consolidate schools in the same or adjacent districts. Review vacancy rates in schools of newly merged districts, make recommendations directly to districts, the State Board of Ed. So it's a really interesting, they're trying to save, I think this total savings is $39 to $58 million. And I forget what a penny raises on the statewide.
10.
Is it 10 million? So, I mean, that's like, if it's $50 million, it's 5 cents, that the tax rate could go down. And that's every year. The problem is everybody looks at things in a bubble, so they see that we have less students, but education costs more. And it goes up with less students, but yet we're doing better things, we're doing more things, we're helping students, and we're also being required to do more as a school. Back 30 years ago, there was in DCF was called SRS, and they used to do counseling for students or people that are having problems right up through age 18. Well, then their budget got cut, so they said, okay, we're not doing counseling anymore. So that got dumped back on the schools, and things that, schools used to never have to do and now become the school's responsibility. There was never a school lunch program in Dover when I first, not when I was on the board, but when I first started coming to school board meetings. They had, there was a vote to do a school lunch program. And then we actually, I think it was before Bill was here, there was a recommendation when we were looking at our plan to improve our school. One of the recommendations came from the staff that we feed our students, because they said they have a lot of students who are hungry, and they felt that the assessments would go better if the students were fed before they took their assessments. So we dumped some more money into that, and it seemed to work. Or, we fed our students and our assessments came up. So there's all these different things that you wouldn't normally associate with school, associate as a school function that we've been required to do. Any other thoughts from the board?
I was just going to say, Act 46, the whole idea wasn't seem to be the focus of finances and saving finances, although it feels like it at our level. But the idea was to expand education opportunities for students, so that one school who might have a smaller population has the benefit of what bigger schools have. So, it's funny how we're really focused about budget and finances, but when you look at the language of Act 46, it doesn't talk about that. It talks about expanding the education opportunities. So I feel like we should be in a good position, because both Dover and Wardsboro really do provide exceptional education opportunities for their students. So by creating one school district, it should only, expand upon that.
Sure.
So I'm hoping that, again, it's not really the state saying, well, we actually want you to save money. Because in that letter, also Governor Scott talked about, closing schools. So ideally, that there's just a population of students that's dwindling, and a lot of schools, and the way of saving money is by having less schools. So, it's interesting that
Sure.
Act 46 is talking about educational opportunities, but then you see things like that talk about money.
Yeah.
So, I just think that we as a school district work towards, again, saying educational opportunities, expanding upon that. That's what the goal is, that's what the purpose of Act 46 is, and to focus on that. So be mindful of budget, but, you know, that certainly isn't the whole reason why they passed this law, although it really does feel like it, doesn't it? Right? So,
Your best defense is just a good offense. Be undeniably good. Spend your neighbor's money wisely, invest it well, and get high-quality outcomes that is in an environment of continuous improvement, and you'll be just fine.
I mean, I think, I really feel that, you know, the Wardsboro Dover Unified School was a really great move, because I think we both school boards have worked really hard to achieve better assessments and to keep the budgets where the voters feel comfortable paying, you know, that they're getting their money's worth. And again, the conversation we had the other day, or last meeting, where parents don't always carry the vote, so we gotta kind of do a good balance.
Sure.
And I think both Wardsboro, you guys have had a budget turned down, I asked you that.
Oh, gosh, it's been a while. It's been at least 15 years, I think.
And the only time I remember Dover being turned down for a request of the school before I was on the board, it happened, and it was, they wanted more portable classrooms. And they said, no, here's an extra $50,000, get an architect, design an addition. And the addition did go down twice, because there was a lot of stuff on the addition that really the voters felt wasn't educationally required, like a big auditorium, which we should have done because it was really cheap money back then. And Bill and I had that conversation, how we regretted that. But eventually, when they got rid of the fluff, you know, then the voters overwhelmingly approved it. And I cannot think of anything that we've asked for as a Dover school board member since I've been on the board that we've been told no. As long as we do a good job and present, you know, a good plan.
I think Bill hits the nail on the head. I mean, as long as you're providing good outcomes and you're doing it at a reasonable price, voters pretty much have left us alone for
Absolutely.
the past, you know, just trying to be fiscally sound, and, you know, our achievement goes up every year, so it's really not a lot you can say. I mean, when I first came on the board, our achievement was kind of in the toilet, and that was when the budget had failed. You know, you can't keep asking for more money and providing poor results.
Correct.
So,
Does class have to, I'm sorry, Andy, be a certain size for results to count? Is there any truth to that?
No, there
I hear
is.
people say that sometimes.
Yeah, when they look at the reporting, if you're too small, they can't report out, because then you can tell which students, the scores,
They can,
the
just
assessments.
can't publicly.
You can't publish.
just can't release it.
Because I know we have some
But
very
they-
high
they also
performing
say-
classrooms that you can't-
They say to the smaller schools that the results can be skewed more. You know, if you have a bigger group, then it averages out, but because we've seen that here, there's been certain classes where we've been able to say, you know what, that assessment's not gonna be that good next year. We used to have a lot of special ed, IEP, and you get those into that area, then sometimes the test scores aren't as good. And then, you know, one year we had a class that just, everybody was just blown out of the water, and our assessments were through the roof. So we get a little bit more of this rockiness.
Will we now be able to, like, for instance, my daughter is in a second grade class that's always been very small, very high performing, we haven't been able to count it. So we've had 5, 6 students in that class. Now that we're combining, if there's 6 children in the second grade over in Wardsboro, being that we're the same district, will we be able to count?
It's still small,
Still small,
yeah.
But you will report out as a district.
but we'll report as a combined second grade.
Yes.
Just for a joke, and I don't know if I think I mentioned this to you the other day, there was a pre-town meeting Bill was at, and I got going because I get so angry with the state. They keep saying, oh, you're two small schools and we don't, and I'm like, well, maybe the state of Vermont's too small. We shouldn't be a state, we should be a suburb of, you know, New Hampshire, beg New York to take us on. And the Secretary of Education keeps saying, oh, you're not just small, you're micro. You know, and so she's calling a lot of our districts micro districts, you know, and well, so be it, but that's one of the things you have in Vermont, you know. I mean, I understand, and there was a lot of arguments made during Act 60 that there's school districts in New York City that are larger than the entire state of Vermont. You know, but they're not as spread out, they don't have the mountains we have, they don't have the weather we have, and it's a whole different world. You know, so it gets a little frustrating. If it does for you folks as parents, think how it does for us with boards. And we've been fighting this for, you know, years and years and arguing that we do a great job. I still maintain that between Susan and Bill, that Dover should be the poster child of what to do for every school. The Dover-Wardsboro Unified District should be the poster child for what everybody should be, and everybody should follow our lead, and they should do, if they don't do it our way, then they shouldn't get any money. But that'll never happen. Sure.
I was thinking, you know, regarding Bill's comment about, you know, creating excellence and you'll be fine. I think a lot of why our towns have voted our budgets positively as well is that you folks have a chance to present that to them when they're voting the budget. In order to vote on that budget, you have to sit in this chair and listen to you folks explain why it's excellent, you know, and why the money is required, and that you are spending the money wisely, answering before they say yay or nay. I just wanted to add that.
And these budgets move around a lot. I mean, a lot moves into the CSU budget every year, do you know what I mean? But everybody looks at, why is the CSU budget up 165%? Well, because they took all of the special ed money and they're pushing it out to all of the schools. But I mean, people don't see that when they read the paper. All they do is they go to that line that says, what's the percentage increase? And they tear that apart. If you don't have the time to explain those things, it does make it very difficult, I think. I mean, I think there's many times we've averted, you know, some sort of, you know, maybe the budget being voted down because we were able to explain to people that, no, you see, that money was here a year ago, and now it's down here. It's not that, you know, we're spending all this money with the supervisor meeting, and now they're just allocating it out to us. So, I mean, it happens every year. Money just moves around. And people don't get fixated on, you know, whether you're spending more or less or what your per pupil costs are. They get caught up in these line items.
Should be.
And it's every year. Are you all set?
Yeah, that's-
Yes.
So in Article 6, talking about transaction, to transact any other business thought proper to include the following, and then you have kind of the last, a catch-all, any other public concerns that have to be legally discussed. Do you anticipate taking questions from the members that attend to talk about maybe more specifics? Hey, you know, I'm curious about what transportation would look like and what your considerations are, and here are my thoughts about that. Are you?
No, that's what I was hoping for.
Okay, to
But I
get
don't
some
think
of those more
it's more for
specifics.
us to get information.
Exactly.
Because we don't know what transportation's gonna look like
Right.
yet.
That's what I mean, to
But
kind
we
of
also,
take public
you know,
comment.
so if Tom comes in and says, hey, I wanna talk about that child, that guy in my daughter's class, because, you know, he yelled at my daughter and I want you, obviously, we legally can't discuss
Right.
that. But if he wanna say,
Talking
hey,
about art teachers, music teachers.
Yeah.
yeah,
language
well,
teachers.
positions, you can't talk
Positions.
about specific people.
Correct, that's, I mean, a music program.
Right.
Phys ed
That's what we're
program,
hoping for,
art
is
program.
input. And you know what? You can input it now, because then we're gonna use that, and you don't have to wait till, that's why we're saying, if there's anything else that you folks can think of, you know, let us know now, or let us know between now and before that meeting. And if you can't make the meeting, let us know, because, you know, we're gonna put all that input into, and again, Bill watches the videos and reads our minutes, and then gonna use that when he comes back for the specifics of, you know, how many art teachers are there gonna be,
Sure.
or what's the art program gonna look like? Is it gonna be teacher-based? Is it gonna be resident-based? You know?
Can we share some of those resources that we have?
Yeah. No, that is really what's there.
So in other words, for those questions that I think, Tom, that you were saying that there are a bunch of parents, you know, that talk about it during the school day, before and after pickup, that's opportunity, I think, for the, you know, voters to say, hey, I have this issue, or I have this question specifically about this program. This is something important to me, or this is a question I have about, you know, what is the criteria for each use of the building, as far as if my son is living in Dover, but I want to go to Wardsboro, what's the criteria to be able to do that?
Yeah.
Like, that would be the time for us to get some public comment, so that it guides us about, okay, this is important, these are the people that came to talk about this particular issue. So it's like a precursor to the, outreach survey that we're going to be sending out. It gives an opportunity to get feedback for the board about what's important and what we should be thinking about.
Is the survey going to be online?
We hope so. We haven't kind of worked all that out yet. We want to get it out as much as we can. We talked about a Survey Monkey possibly.
And you're trying to figure out how to get as much exposure as possible while also making sure that you're having one person
Right.
do the,
Rich is worried about voter fraud.
not voter fraud, but
Dover voter fraud.
making sure that you hear
Wardboro
from
has
all the
no-
voices.
Honor system.
Remember, I grew up with voter early.
Whatever
vote
that
often.
happens, whatever system you come up with, I know that's what you guys are trying to figure out.
Wasn't that the daily system? Vote early, vote often.
I mean, you guys
I've been
really,
dead for 20
I
years,
will
but he votes every election.
commend the study committee, and I know a lot of, just in the planning, this is not happening if you guys were starting July 1st of this year.
Right.
This discussion, getting the input from parents, from community members, the outreach, the give and take, this time right here is extremely valuable. And if you had voted to start July 1st of this year, you'd be voting on a budget. You wouldn't have had this time to do this kind of
Well,
exploration.
I
think
just,
that-
again, there's a lot of districts that sat on their hands. And we started, May 1st, that, whatever our annual meeting was. And I mean, we barely made it, it seems like. I mean, it seems like.
Still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, we met twice a month for the study committee, and we met right after they passed the law, or even before the law was passed, I think, we started having discussions. We met through the summers for 2 years. This will be our third year meeting through the summer, and other schools have started, just started to have the, discussions like a year later, and I don't know how they're getting it done, so. I think we try to be very thoughtful and try to get as much input as we can. And we've worked really hard, so we really hope that you guys do give us some feedback, because it's important. And we appreciate you coming, because I don't think I've seen you at one of these meetings before, the River Valleys, but it's really great. And if you have any thoughts afterwards, please, give whatever you got to Matt, or call me, or send me an email. Anybody else? Let's, you want to call it? Long drive to Wardsboro.
No, it's not.
You go the back way? Okay, why don't we adjourn, folks? Somebody make a motion to adjourn? Carrie moves, Carrie seconds it, all those in favor say aye. Thank you, folks, for coming, it was really good meeting.